Long Horse's story has been talked about in the lonely roads of Louisiana for a few decades now. There's been many vehicle accidents that have gone unexplained, with mysterious dents, claw marks, and odd footprints next to the almost trampled-looking bodies of those who lost their lives. It was only recently where there were enough survivors to put name to the deeds. Long Horse. The fateful afternoon in question, as day bled into night, saw a group of young students encounter Long Horse, barely escaping with their lives. The students had all signed up for a tour of southern colleges, being transported from school to school via bus. As their bus pulled into a rest stop for refueling and letting the driver get a break, that is when they saw it. A few students claimed they saw a horse's head sticking out a nearby bush. The horse was odd in looks and behavior, having almost translucent looking skin, no hair, and beady eyes. From the bush, the horse just stared at all the students. It didn't move, nor did it make any sound. Eventually, one student tossed a few apple slices at the base of the bush in front of the horse's head. After a moment, it finally moved. In an odd movement, its head lowered and started chewing the apple. When it was finished, its head retreated into the bushes and was soon gone. The bus then finished refueling, and soon everyone was on the bus and moving on to their next destination. Now, according to the students, the incident didn't start until a little later, when it all started with repeated knocking on the side of the bus. At first, it was a few tapes against the side and scrapes. The bus driver, when interviewed later, remarked that he thought it was just him brushing against the overgrown branches. The bus was a big one, and he was used to the coarse noise. But he picked up the pace. He noticed that the banging was getting louder and louder, even during stretches of time where there were no trees. Finally, the knocking was loud enough and forceful enough to actually begin moving the bus in an opposite direction. When the driver looked into his side mirror, he saw a vague shape that trailed off into the distance, slamming itself into the back end of the bus. Afraid to slow down, the driver warned all the anxious students to close the windows and to get into their seats. Again, when the students on the left side of the bus got up to close the windows in the back, that was when they saw it. It was the skull of a horse, and it was weaving in the air after them and slamming itself into the bus. The lower jaw was missing, but the head was still connected somehow to a long serpent-like neck. The students screamed, and that spurred the horse on, slamming itself harder and harder until one of the windows broke. The impact caused the bus to skid and slammed into a nearby tree, knocking everyone to the ground as the driver groaned, having hit his head on the wheels of the bus. When questioned another student who was near the back, the bus had shut down, including the lights inside, and as everyone laid on the ground, groaning from accident, another sound joined them, a deep, rapsy ning. When the student looked up, he saw the weird horse skull enter the bus through the window, floating in the air near the ceiling of the bus, its length moving more and more into the bus. The students trembled and continued the story of what happened. A few students had freaked out seeing the ghastly sight and ran for the doors of the bus. They made it outside the bus and were running down the road. The horse snake-like thing suddenly stilled and then rapidly reversed itself out the window. He remembers hearing the sound of fury galloping and the screams of fleeing students and a large rapsy neigh. Then all was silent. The driver eventually got his bearings together and was able to get the bus moving again. Driving further down the road, the rest of the class found the remains of the fleeing students. It looked like they had been both trampled and crushed to death, their lower jaws missing. The bus itself, when getting to the next city, was revealed to have long scores of scratches and dents covering the whole vehicle. When the police came to the road, the student and the driver claimed the bodies were. They couldn't find any of the victims' bodies or signs of a bus accident anywhere. It was eventually ruled that the students were playing a prank and they were lectured sternly about making false police reports. The bus driver was fired for playing along and even damaging the bus due to reckless driving. The missing students were labeled runaways and were never heard from again. Cars occasionally still show up with weirdly shaped dents, and bodies are occasionally found trampled to death.